The FBI seems to be zeroing in on 2 suspects in the Boston Marathon bombing. We have pictures.
There are 3 dead and almost 200 injured. Our WEBN special, Boston Marathon Bombings, starts now. Welcome, I'm Felicia Bearden.
And I'm Trevor Savage.
They're being called armed and dangerous. FBI officials are looking for 2 young men.
They have released photos and videos of men they believe built and planted 2 bombs that exploded near the finish line of this year's Boston Marathon.
This picture is a close-up of the men who they're calling suspect number 1.
It shows him wearing a dark hat and carrying a black backpack. And this is the man they're calling suspect number 2. This first picture of him walking down the street.
You can see he is wearing a white cap with some type of logo on the side.
And then officials released another photo of suspect number 2. This one shows his face.
If you are now remembering being around these 2 men, the FBI is asking that you contact them immediately.
And then a side picture of suspect number 2 was also released. Authorities are encouraging anyone to contact the FBI TIPS hotline at 1-800-CALL-FBI. That's 1-800-CALL-FBI.
Our reporter, Liz Montequilla, is live at the perimeter of the crime scene.
She was at this evening's FBI press conference. Liz? Thanks, Liz. Over 23,000 runners laced up their shoes to run the Boston Marathon, but what was supposed to be a time to celebrate Boston pride and athleticism quickly turned into a day that many runners and spectators would like to forget.
Right before 3 p.m., 2 explosions ripped through the crowd of spectators near the finish line of the Boston Marathon. The blast happened within seconds of each other at 2 different points along Boylston Street at Copley Square.
Our reporter Melanie Platten is here live. She was down at the scene.
Melanie, what did you see?
So when we first heard the blast, we were at a Boylston Street location just a couple blocks up from where the blasts happened, and we're able to secure a camera pretty quickly and head down to the scene. Obviously, there was a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion, a lot of people looking for family members, and we were able to talk to some marathon runners and some eyewitnesses who actually heard the blast. So we're going to roll that for you right now.
I was down there. I worked at the scene of the blast, and it was awful. I'm an emergency room nurse, and I've never seen anything like that before.
I was down by the metal area, and we saw the 2 explosions. Like, oh, man, that's not good. So, a lot of smoke, and there's just a lot of uncertainty at that point.
I was right at the edge of Boylston and whatever street, Brookline, right when they stopped us. So
Love you.
we couldn't go any farther. Right there, they just immediately stopped.
Okay,
Right now, this is not the priority. Try to get everybody out of the area, okay, so they're all safe.
My family was waiting for me at the finish line, so I was just worried about them. We just now got together, so. Sorry?
It was about 4 hours and 11 minutes because we knew that she was just coming around the corner, and it was the first one went off at the finish line. And then 10 seconds later,
230 something, 240 something.
yeah, it was about
Somewhere in there.
240, and then that second one went off farther down.
Sir, listen. It's a major explosion. Get it through your head. It's a major explosion.
So we finally tracked her down a long time later. So we're very happy to all be safe and sound.
Honestly, I can now very much empathize with what our soldiers are going through.
Another division of our WEBN news team was also able to catch up with some eyewitnesses. Take a look.
Well, I was near the finish line, and I was watching the races, and all of a sudden there was this loud explosion, and you're startled, and I turned around and saw that it was just a few feet over my shoulder, and all this glass was flying and people are falling down on the sidewalk. So my impression was, well, go the other way. And I looked down further down Boylston Street, and I saw smoke coming out of another building. So I said, where do which way do you go? And then the police started taking the people and getting them away from Boylston Street. And they took down all the barriers, and so people could get across the street and away from it.
They're rushing people out of here. They're just trying to get people out of the area at the time.
The first explosion, I was just finishing my part in Beacon Street. And then when I heard the explosion, I looked at the people just to see, because I thought it was a bomb. But nobody reacted, people are pretty happy cheering on us, and I continued. I was clueless, but I was concerned, and then I heard the second explosion, and I knew it was a bomb. As soon as I turned into Boylston, I saw the smoke in the finish line, and then I stopped, and I broke. I mean, I really sat on this street, and immediately the police came and stopped us from continuing.
Despite all the chaos at the scene, Boston police and first responders were able to get everything under control and direct people towards Boston Common to find their loved ones. Back to you at the desk.
Thanks, Melanie. The two confirmed blasts killed 3 spectators and injured hundreds of others. The first casualty was Martin Richards. Martin was an 8-year-old boy from Dorchester who was at the marathon with his family. His mother sustained serious injuries. Martin's 6-year-old sister lost her leg in the blast. Martin was known for his knock-knock jokes and sticking up for his friends at school.
The second victim was Crystal Campbell. The 29-year-old had been living with her grandmother in Arlington. She's been described as a hard worker and a loyal friend. She was a restaurant manager and was known to work between 70 and 80 hours most weeks. The final victim was Lingzi Liu. Liu was a Chinese national student at Boston University, where she was pursuing a master's degree in math and science. She was an avid user of social media and has been described by friends and family as having an energetic and bubbly personality.
It was called Healing Our City.
President Obama came to the city to offer words of comfort. I was there at the Cathedral of the Holy Cross in the South End.
Will all be with you as you learn to stand and walk and, yes, run again. Of that I have no doubt. You will run again.
President Obama spoke personally to the city, to those who ran in the marathon, and to the families of those killed in the attack.
I'm here today on behalf of the American people with a simple message. Every one of us has been touched by this attack on your beloved city. Every one of us stands with you.
The president became emotional when he described the victims of the violence.
Today our prayers are with the Campbell family of Medford. They're here today. Their daughter, Crystal, was always smiling. Those who knew her said that with her red hair and her freckles and her ever eager willingness to speak her mind, she was beautiful. Sometimes she could be a little noisy, and everybody loved her for it. She would have turned 30 next month. As her mother said through her tears, this doesn't make any sense. Prayers are with the Liu family of China, who sent their daughter Lingzi to BU so that she could experience all that this city has to offer. She was a 23-year-old student, far from home, and in the heartache of her family and friends on both sides of a great ocean, we're reminded of the humanity that we all share. Our prayers are with the Richard family of Dorchester, to Denise and their young daughter Jane as they fight to recover. And our hearts are broken for 8-year-old Martin with his big smile and bright eyes. His last hours were as perfect as an 8-year-old boy could hope for, with his family eating ice cream at a sporting event.
But just as President Obama honored those who died, he also honored the city as it begins its road to recovery.
If they sought to intimidate us, to terrorize us, to shake us from those values that Deval described, the values that make us who we are as Americans, well, it should be pretty clear by now that they picked the wrong city to do it.
He also gave a simple warning to those responsible for the attack.
Yes, we will find you. And yes, you will face justice.
And as he's done so often as president, Mr. Obama offered a little bit of hope and a little bit of comfort going forward.
Next year, on the third Monday in April, the world will return to this great American city to run harder than ever and to cheer even louder for the 118th Boston Marathon. Bet on it.
After the ceremony, the president traveled to Massachusetts General Hospital to visit people who were injured.
Along with the 3 confirmed deaths, the blast injured close to 180 people.
The injuries range in severity from amputations to life-threatening injuries to concussions and lacerations.
That's right, the nails and ball bearings contained in the pressure cookers inflicted some serious damage. Our reporter, Charles Williams, is live with information on those injured. Charles?
Thanks. Many first responders are being credited heroes with saving lives, but another factor to that was the medical tent at the end of the finish line. I spoke with Dr. Sanjay Gupta about the extent of some of these victims' injuries.
The vast majority of the injuries seem to be of the lower part of the body, and it's a little bit unclear why. Usually when you have explosions, you have a force that sort of comes up and then out, and here it seemed to sort of stay low and then come up, and as a result, then it could have just been the way that the explosives were contained, where they were positioned, but a lot of lower extremity injuries.
BB-sized pellets, nails, and metal debris were removed from many of the victims. Some had as many as 40 nails embedded in their bodies.
Yeah, one of the doctors at the Brigham sort of said this was similar to an IED, an improvised explosive device, and I think I've been in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it was very similar, those types of injuries, again, to the legs.
I mean, as a military vet, I've seen some pretty bad stuff, but this is pale compared to, that's pale compared to what I've seen, what this is right here.
One surgeon at Mass General says he was amazed by the results of the patients who he described have high spirits.
I've been moved and as a matter of fact, really amazed by the resolve of our patients. I talked to some of them. I talked to some of the families. They're really amazing people. Some of them woke up today with no leg, and they told me that they're happy to be alive.
A total of 176 were injured and 3 were killed. Currently, we know that Brigham and Women's Hospital saw a total of 35 patients. 10 remain hospitalized and 4 are listed in critical condition. At Tufts Medical Center, 5 patients remain hospitalized with non-life-threatening injuries and 9 have been discharged. 11 patients remain at Mass General, with 5 in serious condition and 6 fair. Boston Medical has 16 patients, 1 critical, 10 serious, and 5 in fair condition. Beth Israel has 13 patients, with 2 in the ICU. Tufts says that none of their patients had to have amputations. Live in Boston, I'm Charles Williams, WEBN.
Thanks, Charles. Coming up next, we take a closer look at what exactly has changed in the city.
Our reporter Andrew Brightman takes Wire on the T to show us what's facing commuters. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We want to share with you the latest details in this investigation. FBI officials just released pictures and surveillance video of the 2 people they're calling suspects in the bombing.
They are asking everyone to help identify them. Authorities are saying the 2 men are armed and dangerous.
Again, if you know anything about these 2 suspects, officials are asking to call the FBI tips hotline at 1-800-CALL-FBI. That's 1-800-CALL-FBI. And since the bombings, a lot has changed in Boston, both emotionally and physically. Our own Dustin Vladkowski is here to explain what Copley Square looks like currently and over the past few days. Dustin.
Thanks, Trevor. The area where the bombs exploded on Monday is still closed off. Here's what it looked like on Tuesday. Copley Square in the heart of Boston's Back Bay was shut down and sealed off Tuesday. The area was part of the massive crime scene set up around the bombing sites. The Boston Public Library was closed and the Fairmont Copley Plaza Hotel stopped receiving new guests. Adding to a strange feeling, no lunchtime crowds outside the John Hancock building. They were replaced by National Guard soldiers and police barricades keeping traffic away. It was as if the race the day before had ended and everyone simply left. Trash from the marathon blew around in the streets, while signs showing runners where to meet their families remained in place. Inside the square, the race's medical tent remained up and was surrounded by police vehicles of all kinds. We're now going to update you on how the perimeter looks tonight. It's been compressed from the way it was earlier this week, 2 blocks westward from where it was on Arlington Street over to Clarendon Street, moving down towards Huntington Avenue, around the back of the Prudential Center, around the back of Heinz Convention Center, and up along Boylston Street. This area is all still closed off to the public. Basically, there are a few buildings that you still can't get into tonight. Those are the Boston Public Library and the Lenox Hotel. The hotel is not receiving any new guests, and the library is closed indefinitely as the investigators continue to move through this area and sift through material from the bombs, from the explosions that may lead them to the more results in the investigation. But 2 buildings have also opened up tonight. The Prudential Center and Heinz Convention Center are now open to the public. They're accessible from the Huntington Avenue entrances only. The Boylston Street entrances are still closed because of their proximity to the bomb sites. Back to you.
Thanks, Dustin. Monday, over 23,000 runners started the Boston Marathon, but only 17,000 finished. Our reporter, Ariana Sandillo, spoke with some runners who didn't have the opportunity to cross the finish line.
Imagine this. You're half a mile from finishing your first Boston Marathon, when suddenly you're stopped by police and told the race is over. Stay calm. This is what happened to Larissa Brewster on Marathon Monday.
We just got into a big crowd and everyone was saying the race is over and we had no idea what that meant. We didn't know why.
Larissa and almost 5,000 other runners weren't able to cross the finish line and receive their medals. But luckily for them, it didn't mean they would go home without the gold. Volunteers collected all the medals in running bags that weren't picked up by runners. They were brought to the Park Plaza Castle where they could be picked up the next day.
It was emotional. I got a little teary-eyed, yeah. It was touching.
The Red Cross, Salvation Army, and marathon volunteers helped sort through thousands of belongings in order to get the medals to the displaced runners.
So I'm glad that they did that. Hopefully they can get that to everybody who experienced that.
A candlelight vigil will be held tomorrow afternoon at 4 p.m. at the O'Neill Plaza in Chestnut Hill. Reporting from Boston, I'm Ariana Sandillo for WEBN News.
It seems everyone has has gotten his or her belongings, but there's a scandal on the internet.
Some marathon medals are being sold. Police think these might have been stolen and the thieves are trying to make some money from the tragedy. And security isn't an issue taken lightly. Maggie Smolka is live in Boston to tell us how officials are keeping Boston safe.
Thanks, Trevor. While most people were running away from the tragic scene at the finish line, the National Guard was headed towards it. Now, it was just a few short moments after the explosion, so they were unsure of what to expect. They just knew it was their job to keep Boston safe.
That's our job, is to make sure that everything is safe inside that area, and also just to put the hearts and minds at ease around the area, because just having our presence here is why we're here.
This tragic event has increased security, but not just in Boston. Security for other major city events is at the top of everyone's minds. Sporting events, concerts, and festivals in major cities like D.C. and New York are heightening their security measures. And security even extends internationally. The London Marathon is coming up this weekend, and Home Security says there will be an increase in police presence. Back to you at the desk.
Thanks, Maggie. Along with National Guard in the park, security has also increased on the MBTA.
Our reporter Andrew Brightman rode the T and talked to commuters.
The T is running slowly again, but this time it doesn't have to do with train malfunctions, but from fallout of the Boston Marathon bombings. Hundreds of National Guard troops have been called in for additional support, putting Boston commuters on notice.
Honestly, it's made me scared to possibly know that something else could happen. It's made me really scared, but I guess it's better safe than sorry.
Right after the bombings, the Copley Square station was closed. While this may have caused headaches for commuters, they accept the precautions as a way to stay safe.
I mean, they're doing what they have to do to protect us, so you have to take it for what it's worth. They're saving lives.
While they accept the additional security, it is still a painful reminder of the bombings.
I don't want to cry or anything, but I could have been there, and I don't know. I'm sorry.
In light of the Boston Marathon bombings, over 900 National Guard troops have been called in for additional security. As Boston begins to move forward as a whole, authorities remain on high alert. Reporting for WEBN News, I'm Andrew Brightman.
Increased security around Boston hasn't stopped some from rocking the boat.
Thursday, 2 bomb threats were received in the city. The first threat happened at the Moakley Courthouse in South Boston. Reporter Ashley Allen was at the courthouse.
It was a code red.
We were standing there, we're watching the SWAT team coming in, and then when I turned around, they had an alarm, they had a bomb scare.
You just saw a flood of people running out of the courthouse, just terrified. So it was definitely a little nerve-wracking.
Monday's bombings have left Bostonians on edge. The huge crowd and press was outside the courthouse before the code red because of a media report that police had arrested the person responsible for the bombings at the marathon. But that media report turned out to be false.
It was a bomb scare that has triggered all of this.
The past couple of days have been very tragic for the city of Boston. Authorities have yet to make an arrest, but they say their investigation is getting close. Reporting for WEBN, I'm Ashley Allen.
It's still unclear whether the courthouse evacuation was connected to Monday's attacks.
But the threats didn't stop there. Shortly after 11:30 p.m., another bomb threat was emailed to the State House. The building was evacuated and bomb-sniffing dogs were brought onto the scene. No explosives were located in the building and the surrounding area. The scene was cleared after midnight.
Coming up next, I will tell you what advice a child psychologist has for parents.
Reporter Yiping Yang takes us to an important vigil. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. The city's biggest vigil was on the Boston Common.
It was called Peace Here and Everywhere. Our live reporter Yiping Yang was there. Yiping?
Grief and hope come together at this vigil. 56-year-old marathon runner Lizzie Lee was there. She's grateful that her daughter decided not to come to her run. Besides, she stayed home to vote the Venezuela's presidential election.
My running partner told me, who would have thought that your daughter was safer today in Venezuela than in Boston.
Hundreds of people like Lee are uniting to honor the victims.
I think everyone just has that need to feel connected and to know that we are all affected by this. And at this point, we need to be making sure that kindness is our first gesture, that love is our first approach to strangers, to anyone we meet.
I thought this is a chance to grieve and try to move on from this event, to again come together.
Vigil supporters broke down with tears, embraced their loved ones, and offered flowers.
I came to give away 26 flowers as 26 random acts of kindness for the 26 miles of the Boston Marathon.
People are grateful for the way the city has reacted and shown their kindness.
It's tough, you never think it's going to happen in your hometown. And, I'm sure you hear everybody say that, but you don't quite know how you're going to react until it happens to you. And I'm just impressed with how the city of Boston's handling it so far, and all the people here. So it's been great.
It brings up the fragility of all of our lives. But it also brings up that there are way more good people on this planet than there are bad. And if we learn anything from being here tonight, we need to learn that, to not let fear win.
Besides Boston Common, there were also vigils at Dorchester and Boston universities. Back to the studio.
Thanks, Yiping. Other vigils were held this week for the victims, including one in Dorchester for 8-year-old Martin Richards. More are expected in the coming weeks as more news is released on the victims.
Boston leaders are lending a hand. Boston Mayor Thomas Menino and Governor Deval Patrick have established a monetary fund for victims and their families. One Fund Boston was announced by both men at the press conference after the attacks. The fund was kicked off with a $1 million donation from John Hancock. Visit onefundboston.org for more information.
A lot of families and children were at the marathon, so I asked Dr. Daniel Sharon of the Center of Effective Child Therapy how this would impact children emotionally.
Kids who are actually there, who witnessed it, they're going to need a lot of support in these coming weeks. A lot of listening to them, answering their questions, and trying to assure them as much as possible about the safety that's being provided to them by all the adults around them.
Since it was a holiday, some kids even watched the marathon on TV. But Dr. Daniel Sharon has some parental advice for those that did.
It's really important to, first of all, also make sure that we limit some of that media coverage. We have so much available to us, but we don't need all of that. And I talk about changing the channel, literally.
Clinical director and psychologist Mitch Ablett says it is important for parents to answer whatever questions kids may have.
I'd kind of sum it up with, I guess we could call it like the 3 M's. It's really important to monitor the kids and watch them very carefully. How are they doing emotionally? I guess the second would be like managing things directly, giving them the messages around how things are being managed, and to really model for them, staying calm yourself.
Both doctors also suggested that parents should try doing different activities. Here are some tips. Try maintaining normalcy by keeping them in their normal routines. Structure is also important. To do this, try creating opportunities for them to connect with others to talk about their feelings. Lastly, create a chance for them to give back and help others.
The bombings also sent shockwaves throughout the sports world.
Reporter Bianca Buno is at the perimeter barricade. She has information as to what this tragedy means to Boston sports and beyond.
Thanks, guys. Monday's bombings made waves all throughout the sporting world, and runners are asking how it will affect the future of marathons in Boston as well as the rest of the world. Isaac Moore set out to find the answer.
And I hope to qualify again and come back. I would not think twice.
I've always wanted to run it again. I mean, I love the Boston Marathon. I think it's the greatest race on the planet.
Many are asking, what's next? After Monday's tragedy, people fear the attack may affect future marathons in Boston, but most runners seem willing to come back. One runner from Nebraska agreed, saying it wasn't a lack of security.
Yeah, I would run it again, definitely. My wife and parents were down
at the finish line. Actually, they were in between the two blasts, just on the opposite side of the street. And they said that bomb-sniffing dogs were out a couple of times, actually. They saw them physically walking around, so I don't think it was overlooked at all.
Nevertheless, added precautions will be made for next year's Boston Marathon, but Governor Deval Patrick says it will be even bigger and better than ever.
In terms of how we go forward, I'd just like to remind everyone we've had 116 years of incident-free marathon, and every year we have learned from the last experience. This is a painful and tragic lesson, but we will learn from this as well, and next year's marathon will be even bigger and better.
Reporting for WEBN News, I'm Isaac Moore.
As next week's London Marathon draws closer, there has been some concern as to how other marathons will be affected. WEBN attempted to contact the organizations in charge of the London, New York, and Chicago marathons, but were unable to speak with a representative. A spokesperson from the Chicago Marathon released this statement in response to our request. We are in constant communication with the City of Chicago, the Office of Emergency Management, the Chicago Police and Fire Departments regarding the security plan that is implemented at the Chicago Marathon. We will conduct a comprehensive security review as part of the planning process for this year's event. The marathon is scheduled to take place on October 13th. FIFA is making major changes to its security. The International Football Organization is increasing security for next year's World Cup in Brazil. There will be Secret Service agents, police officers, military, and Interpol. A perimeter will be set up around each stadium and satellite surveillance will be used over the country. Here at home Monday, Red Sox fans watched the team beat Toronto and then made the traditional walk from Fenway Park to Boylston Street to watch the marathon. That night, the Bruins canceled its matchup against Ottawa. A makeup date has yet to be decided. And the next night, the Celtics canceled its game against Indiana. It won't be rescheduled because the NBA playoffs will begin next week. Before its game against the Buffalo Sabres on Wednesday, the Bruins held a special ceremony in remembrance to the victims of Monday's bombings. It was a special moment when the entire stadium joined in for the singing of the national anthem. Good Samaritans were found everywhere on Monday, even in the form of Boston athletes. Former Patriots offensive lineman Joe Andruzzi was at the finish line and was photographed carrying a woman to safety. Andruzzi was closely tied to the 9/11 terrorist attacks as well. His three brothers were New York firefighters who were on the scene helping victims. Other Patriots figures showed their support by donating to the Boston Marathon Relief Fund. Team owner Robert Kraft promised to donate $100,000, while newly acquired wide receiver Danny Amendola tweeted that he would donate $100 for each reception he makes and $200 for each drop he has in the upcoming season. Local athletes weren't the only ones showing support this week. Teams all around the country held a moment of silence before the start of each game. Additionally, in New York, the Yankees played Sweet Caroline midway through the third inning to show support for its biggest rival. Let's listen in. That's all for sports regarding the Boston Marathon. Back to you at the desk.
Thanks, Bianca.
To shed light on a dark time, some people got together on the Boston Common.
They were offering free hugs. They say their message is to spread love and hope.
Giving away free hugs to support the victims of the bombing of the marathon. So I felt that this is a good way to get out and show love for my city.
And to come out here to see them do something like that, it's very touching. It really is, because I think we all need a hug right about now.
This has been a WEBN special, the Boston Marathon bombing. I'm Felicia Bearden.
And I'm Trevor Savage. Thanks for watching.